Have you checked the children? Your little match
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower you're not seeing behind me, at least right now, as Jaime and Fuego.
I'm Cecil Laird.
And if it please you, join us here for a bit of special palaver from the horror show set on Hail to Stephen King. And the reason Cecil is along with me for this is because we reviewed the previous Mangler, the original one directed by Tobe Hooper, starring a very over-the-top Robert Englund. And as bad as it is, it still has its charm to a degree. So in continuing along with a series that I haven't actually been able to do for a while because we pretty much worked our way through all of them, but this was one that Tim and I talked about doing together. Films that forgot the face of their father, and today we're going to be talking about The Mangler 2, and then its follow-up a few years Langler, but The Mangler Reborn.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, this was the second and the third entry in the series, and yeah, I mean, I've talked previously on this program and this channel, obviously, about the two Sometimes They Come Back sequels, and we are hoping to get back to like the Children of the Corn series at one particular point. But number 2 follows a formula that I'm gonna just toss it over to you because we have the second and the third entry here, and they still have yet to like remake or do any additional entries in this series. But it follows a formula that him and I were talking about off camera that just clue the crazy hail quartet of awesome peeps into your thoughts on this sort of formula, I guess.
So yeah, what I found is during this time, especially dealing with certain Stephen King properties, in point of fact, I found that there were certain series during the late 90s, early 2000s that ran by the formula of like, there was the first movie that was really awesome and well received, and then they forced a sequel. That sequel is not good, and then they did a third, and the third happened to be better. So I feel that that was the case with this series. That was the case with the From Dusk Till Dawn movies, right? The first one and then the second one and third one were straight to DVD, but I feel like the second one was not as good as the third. I even think that that formula fits for Sometimes They Come Back. I think the first one was good, the second one was trash, and then the third one kind of went back to the basics of the formula. When they do that, a lot of times it makes for better movies. It obviously still is a pale comparison to the original, but it's at least closer to the enjoyment of the first one than the second one ends up being for whatever reason.
Yeah, and it's a different story with a series like, Pet Sematary, for instance, where the second one with Eddie Furlong and Clancy Brown, I kind of like that movie, which was another
It's
in
been
this
a long
series.
time since I've seen it.
Yeah, it's definitely not great, and it pales in comparison, but I, in some ways, had a little more enjoyment with that one than the 2019 remake. But, yeah, man, anytime a King franchise just continues on in this regard and he has no creative input and probably doesn't care, as great of a philanthropist as he is with donating millions to, build libraries in Maine and do all kinds of other cool stuff, I still think he is not averse to collecting a paycheck, Dark Tower, and, that sort of thing. So, yeah, he will praise stuff and not denounce it, at least right off the bat. He kind of veers back sometimes and, just says, yeah, that kind of sucked. But starting off with the second film in this franchise, which I guess with 3 films, you can consider it a franchise. That's, it has to have more than just 2. You have to have more than a sequel. And so, the second film, if we're going to just follow the format that we like to of overall impressions, and it's probably not going to dive as deep into either of these films, with 2 to cover in the same video, but this was very much the weakest of the 3 films in this trilogy as you take it. A lot of unlikable characters. In fact, I don't even know if there was a single one that I really rallied behind. A lot of like late 90s, early 2000s stereotypes, especially in the students at this. When I saw that it was called a collegiate college, was the name of the school. It was like something collegiate college. I was just like, okay, you've got some sharp minds that are going here and running this particular place. And Yeah, you have Lance Henriksen being absolutely, I mean, wasting talent like his that we've got to interact with Lance a few times. Well, one time in particular.
yeah.
I mean, a few interactions over the course of
over the course of a weekend.
over the course of the weekend event for Mad Monster Party here in Arizona. But yeah, this is about as over the top direct to video drudgery as you would probably expect. Pretty much every character of this main crew of kids, you've got like kind of the more handsome jock, you've got the token black kid, you've got the stoner, you've got the hottie who was going around with her boobs hanging out the entire time practically, and then you've got the kind of conflicted, angsty goth girl. And so yeah, I mean, hitting a lot of those marks, and the series veers, as we'll get more so into story, into territory that you wouldn't really expect from a Mangler movie. It almost feels like this could have been kind of a retrofit sort of situation, perhaps like we had with the Hellraiser franchise when we were covering the extent of that stuff. But
this could have been a resurgence. This is closer to a Maximum Overdrive movie than it is a Mangler movie.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, but also trying to give it that. I think this is post 9/11, or excuse me, post Y2K, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I mean, there is that tech-centricness that it's trying to implement, but it really just falls flat on its face with, the whole, like, hacker culture and stuff. Because this was after the Angelina Jolie, and I think Matt Lillard was in Hackers, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, it was trying to write off some of those coattails, and yeah, it just feels like it has nothing to do with the original short story from Night Shift that I love so much, aside from just using that name. So it is, as you said off camera to me, very much like a Lawnmower Man sort of situation where it doesn't have anything to do with the source material really, aside from the name. I don't believe Stephen King sued anybody over this like he did with the original Lawnmower Man film, where he's like, do not say based on a short story by Stephen King, because this has so little of a resemblance. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts. A waste of time, goofy, and not really I struggle to name redeeming qualities. So
yeah, my overall thoughts are this is terrible. Also, I mean, this is easily the worst. It's just a bad movie. It's rated R, but every kill is off screen except for one person that is kind of melted a little bit. Yeah, the shock thing. Everything else is literally off screen, so it has to be because of the gore. So maybe because of the language. So maybe there was more gore shot originally, and so they anticipated the R rating and let it go, and then ended up cutting it for TV or something, because this could play in a PG theater right now, what this is. It is trash. There's a lot of different reasons why. We're not going to break it down as fully as we normally do, but the sound mix and the actual music is so over the top and overbearing. It's trying to be like synthy coolness, but it's just garbage that distracts you from everything you're seeing on scene. The story itself is about this angsty goth girl who has a completely rich family and father who wants to take care of her, but she's trying to rebel against
entitlement.
And so she uploads. So he is a part of a security company that has provided special security to her school, and she uploads the Mangler 2.0 virus, which, how did the Mangler get transferred into a computer virus, and how did she get her hands on it? And it's already stupid and specious right out of the gate, but she uploads this virus, and this new security system, which is meant to protect the school, of course, starts turning on everyone, and things that aren't even really connected to the grid somehow start being affected by the grid.
Like washing machine equipment.
Yeah, dishwashing equipment that's obviously not connected to anything.
Yeah,
but
like shears are coming at people at one particular
shears
point.
with wires wrapped around one
wires
side.
Of any kind. They're like pulling people up and hanging them and stuff like that. So it just really... I mean, how interconnected is everything in this place?
There's absolutely no logic to it. There's just anything with machinery can turn against you however it wants and kill you. That's what's going on, and the humans don't believe it, and then when they do believe it, they have to just try and survive, and it's just trash, leading to a final confrontation with essentially the motherboard mind, which has fused itself with someone that you know without spoiling it. But it's just such trash. Even the actual practical effects that they used for this part was just kind of okay.
I mean, it was better than a lot of other stuff in the film, I would say, but
that's not saying much.
No, it's not, unfortunately. And also, I mean, granted, I was watching this on a DVD, but the look of the film felt very pedestrian, direct-to-video sort of approach, and just really didn't do it for me in that regard. Since you pretty much mentioned most of the story, aside from the fact that I do want to say the break-in that starts out this movie made me scratch my head a little bit. Was that a cry for attention, rebellions? Because we never really figured out the motive of why this character is actually doing this at the beginning of the movie.
Nope.
You know, as opposed to maybe just muck stuff up for, you know, somebody else. So, yeah, and it's just like slap on the wrist, you know, let's, you know, send you back to wherever. It's and also the writing of these characters in just how one-dimensional they are, and the stoner fawning over the girl with the big boobs who's just brandishing them pretty much the entire movie.
Exploitative just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. As I was watching this, you know, yesterday evening with you know, the lady, I was like, wow, well, you know, Tata's over here, or whatever, the Jugs or whatever I was calling her, because, I mean, she just goes around in, like,
the skinniest
like a
bikini,
bra.
yeah,
a bra the entire time, and the camera angles actually just go directly to it, over and over and over, and so
nothing we would have complained about when this originally came out.
No, and it's not, dare I say,
it's not a complaint now either.
It's still
just,
not.
It's something to point out that it is so obvious.
Yeah, very just on the nose or on the elsewhere in that particular regard, but
very
just the very trite way that these characters were written, and even Lance as this, you know, he's the head of the school, and what happens to him with, you know, a little hacking with a graphic on the homepage of it looked like the old paint, like Windows Paint kind of thing from way back in the 90s. So it was very amusing in that regard, but not for the right reasons, I would say. And I mean,
the effects were trash too. I mean,
there's
just nothing else really.
They were bad. The hacker culture, and also the
I want to
back
move
to
on so bad.
Oh, I know. we're wrapping up right now, but that whole kind of synthy goth, kind of industrial music, sort of, but also in the mix on my TV, it was very loud, as you mentioned, and then they were trying to give some tension and some driving force. And dude, also the Chef Boyardee guy, the guy who's the main cook at the place, who becomes a part of their final clique,
gets
sort
locked
of
in the freezer for a minute.
Yeah, and he's in there smoking cigarettes, and you know, he's just the fact that he was supposed to be there for some sort of strange comic relief and play a factor in all of this, I did not understand. And even without spoiling the resolution, the fact that anger amongst characters that was there at the beginning of this film was completely forgotten. I didn't get it. This is probably one of the worst films as far as forgetting the face of your father in any of the Stephen King reviews that we've done here on, you know, whether Tale specifically or on the larger channel in general, dude. It's like this is in the running for the worst. I feel like I need to do a tier ranking or a countdown or something of the worst of the Stephen King sequels that weren't based on prior source material.
We can certainly do that. Well, we're doing a tier list, of all the sequels. So we'll be doing that separate from the actual adaptations.
Things like that. But,
so we'll be getting to that. But let's
get to
end
a slight
that.
improvement. That was it was still very slight for me. I think the Mangler Reborn, from what we were talking about before starting filming here, I feel like you were a little more accepting of this one maybe than I was.
Yeah,
but
I think I was.
I mean, there was one cast member in particular that you know why I was a little more forgiving. It's a guy from the Phantasm franchise. Who's in this
Reggie.
film. He plays a smaller role, and I'm not going to say how it ends, for his character. But Yeah, so do you want to hit overall thoughts and stories since
Sure.
we kind of combined both of those on this one?
Yeah, so my overall thoughts were I do think this is a better Mangler movie. It actually has to do with the Mangler mythos from the first movie. It like is the most direct sequel to it. Even though it's the third movie, it actually has newspaper articles talking about everything that happened in the first movie.
Yep, opening credits are filled with them, and they actually give you some aftermath, and
That the machine was dismantled
Yep.
and sold off and stuff like that. And so there's...
Which I dig because, dude,
I did too.
I love the Mangler
the
short
continuity
story,
and stuff.
and I also I have a soft spot for the silly original film, but
Yeah.
I love the short
I love
story.
that original film.
Yeah, despite
As
the
dumb as it is that it
preposterousness
gets
of-
up and walks around, but
yeah,
nonetheless, I still love it. It's a creature movie, all in all.
it is. Yeah.
So yeah, this one, there's a man who has gotten his hands on a piece of the Mangler. He's a repairman, and he has been building something in the attic, and he's getting crap from his wife as a result, and it turns out that he's been a little bit more obsessed with it than he thought, because he ends up killing his wife.
Yeah,
and
it worked in a week. Hammer time.
yeah, starting a path of destruction, as there is as we cut to a woman that we meet for the first time who is having the worst day of her life because she's lost her job. She gets home and loses her man.
Dumpster, like right
yeah,
there.
and then the repairman shows up, and he almost immediately takes a hammer to her head.
Yeah.
And
They come in threes, is what people
Yeah.
always say about these sort of situations.
So she becomes his locked up captive, and while he is doing something, building something in the meantime, and anyone that runs afoul of him meets the end of his hammer. And I'll let Fuego continue the story from there, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say my overall thoughts continuing are that I enjoyed this one more. There's definitely more gore. It is more closely tied to the Mangler, but it is still not a good movie.
Yeah, not in any way. It still forgot the face of its father, as I've said before. You get Reggie Bannister in here from the Phantasm franchise, and he's a guy that I had the pleasure to interview a few years ago at Scarefest in Kentucky, and it's still one of the favorite moments of the amazing time that we've shared together here on the Horror Show, because I mean, one of my favorite characters, over the top and all this other stuff. He's playing a little more of an unsavory character in this. Him and his son, despite the fact that they like to argue over cigarette smoking and the bad choices of that, they break into people's homes, and they kind of have this tandem sort of situation going on. So there is that element, and then also, without getting into too much, this older guy who is the one who is trying to reassemble and everything. He also, like, his daughter shows up at one particular point, and also
Everyone's fair game.
Yeah, everyone is fair game, and it's also his house that Reggie Bannister and said son decide to try to break into, and they think it's an unsuspecting one, and despite assessing that it looks a little crappier on the exterior, they think this is going to be something good for them. So it gets relatively repetitive in that regard, and it does stay pretty much one location for the most of it. Set design is nothing too amazing, although there is at least more major splatters of blood and kills, whether it's hammer bludgeoning or the scene that I wanted to mention that I did find the most interesting, and it is in the finale, where like crawling into a said hole, and so I thought that was
That's
relatively grimy and gross, and so that was probably my favorite sequence in the film. And our final girl is okay. We do have unnecessary gratuitous nudity of her early in the film, so that may appeal. I mean, it appealed to me because she's pretty, but for a lot of our women fans on the show who think that it's done in an unnecessary fashion. Yeah, this is one of those films where, just like when I was watching Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2 the other day, and it was a lot of just
nudity,
excessive, unnecessary
we'll talk about that.
nudity. We will get to that soon in the coming weeks and stuff like that. But yeah, this one, well, yeah, I will agree with you that it was a slight improvement because of the fact that it tried to be a little bit gorier, and it actually tied itself back into the mythology. I still I still can't recommend either of these except for the elitist completist that wants to be able to ridicule and laugh about this stuff with all of your Stephen King friends and be like, yo, I've seen all 13, Children of the Corn films at this point, 12 or 13, whatever it is now. I've seen, the entire Mangler trilogy. I've seen the Sometimes They Come Back trilogy. There's a lot of films in all of these sequel series of the beloved King source material that seemed like cash grabs, but I will at least admit that the third one seemed like it had its heart a little bit more in the scripting process, in the place of revering the source material a little bit more. Even if they still kind of stumbled around quite a bit with it, at least they weren't going around and having a computer tell you you've been mangled sort of thing, because that just made me laugh,
what?
man.
Black guy didn't die first this time.
Yeah.
Oh, why would you?
Sending that message to him at that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
This one, I actually, I do. I quite enjoyed this one, especially compared to the last one, especially towards the last 20 minutes. When you get to what he's actually assembled, and it's basically a souped up, different version of the original Mangler.
Smaller in scale, obviously.
Smaller in scale, more portable where it need to be, but a little bit more deplorable as well. You get punctured on your way into a meat grinder, essentially, and I enjoyed seeing that. I'll be honest, it's gross, but that's what I'm here for with these horror movies.
Get some grimy entrail, ground up sort of nastiness, and at least they showed that as much as they veered away from the gore for whatever reason
completely
in the second film. Completely, man. I mean, you still saw where the girl's hair got caught in the second one and she was, pulled through, but it was still like some blood splattering on a dryer, on a washer and a dryer, and on a wall and things like that.
It's just ridiculous. This actually had some payoff as far as blood goes.
And since we are kind of gore hounds, at least at times here in the horror show, that's where we will give a little credit to the practical effects in this, at least in comparison, and with trying to be connective and trying to dream at least a little bit different. And they definitely dreamed differently in the second one, but once again, I will double down that Mangler 2 felt more like a retrofit, and it makes me wonder if with research that could be proven to be the case in comparison with 3, where it was a very deliberate and closely linked sequel in comparison. So
I think that's pretty much going to cover our thoughts on these two sequels that forgot the faces of their father.
Damn right they did.
If you guys enjoyed these videos, click the like button and subscribe. And if you want to become a patron, click the link in the description box down below. And Fuego, take her away.
Senor. Not much else to really mention aside from the fact that here in the month of April, our book of the month is none other than The Green Mile, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. It makes me feel incredibly old. I still remember when those little serialized paperbacks were coming out in the grocery stores and stuff. And so on May 1st, which will be the final Saturday live Stephen King, that's when we're going to be discussing that book in its entirety, all 6 of the entries. Very excited about that. And there is also a Hail to Stephen King Facebook group that has lots of cool discussion if you're interested in that sort of palaver. But until then, I have to extend a grande gracias, not to all of you, but also to my partner in crime, Cecil Laird, here for jumping on this discussion with me. It's always a pleasure to have this sort of awesome crossover amongst the various programs that we do here on the horror show. It's great having you, man.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hells yeah. And until the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego. Sen amigos, constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I hope we share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. Just read The Mangler, the original short, because it's really fun and dark and kind of nasty in a lot of ways.